And we'll continue with A House Like a Lotus by Madeline L'Engle. The view of the Acropolis from the balcony of the King George was very like the poster in Petros's in Cowpertown. I took longer over breakfast than I'd expected, looking out at the view, reading bits from the book. And Epidarius. Sandy would expect me to have done my homework, relaxing in the warm morning sunlight. So I had to dress in a hurry to get down to the lobby by 10. Not difficult. I don't have a large wardrobe to choose from, unlike Kate, who could barely get all her clothes plus herself into her room at Benecide. Well, Kate's an only, and if I had that many clothes, I'd have a terrible time deciding what to wear. I put on a blue and white seersucker dress and my sandals and was ready when Zachary pulled up in a diesel taxi with fumes coming out the tailpipe. I remembered thinking the car was on fire when I first saw a diesel taxi in Lisbon. I felt simultaneously warm with excitement and frozen with shyness as I sat by this extremely handsome young man on the drive to the Hilton. Zachary did the talking, so I didn't have to worry about what to say. And listen, Red, as we drove up to the Hilton. Paul, about coming up to my room, it's perfectly okay. I mean, I'm not going to try anything or anything like that, so just relax. His room was on the 11th floor of the Hilton. In the best curve of the building, he told me, as we went up at a very swift elevator. He led me through his room and right out onto the balcony, as I caught my breath in awe and delight. He had a view not only of the strange flat-topped hill with the Parthenon, but also a wide vista of the harbor at Piraeus, with the Aegean Sea to the left. And there was a high, stony mountain rising out of cypress trees, topped with a stone belfry. And then a large white building, probably a monastery. It was far more spectacular than the view from the King George or the poster at Petros. I had let my breath out in what was almost shock at the vast sweep of the gloriousness. He gave me a proprietary smile. Told you it would wow you. It did, but the funny thing was that despite the staggering magnificence of the view, I liked my old hotel better than the Hilton. As though reading my thoughts, Zachary waved toward the room. The decor is pure Hilton, and a Hilton is a Hilton is a Hilton. However, my pa has connections, and the view redeems it. And the bathroom is European, black marble, with a tub made for people who prefer baths to showers. Like me, I said. I can't start the day without a shower. Okay, what now? The Acropolis, please, if you haven't been there too many times. The Acropolis, pretty Paul, can't be visited too many times. We'll just grab a cab. Can't we walk? We could if we had nothing else to do all day. I want to drive out in the country with you, and then come back to Athens, and maybe go to the Plaka, to one of my favorite small taverns. He was planning to be with me the whole day. I felt a thrill of pleasure ripple over me. I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye. He was just as gorgeous as I thought, and at least 2 inches taller than I. It was a glorious end-of-summer day, despite Zachary's chatter about the terrible pollution which was destroying the Parthenon and other ancient sites, and which gave him allergies to me. The air was clear and crisp and invigorating. It would be romanticizing to say it was like Gaia, because Gaia had as much fog and dampness as any other island, but it was like Gaia as I remembered it. Zachary insisted on paying the entrance fee for both of us, and I was not happy about this. I didn't want to be beholden to some guy I had just met who came from the world of megabucks. I pulled out my Greek money and my booklet of traveler's checks, but he brushed me aside and got our tickets, and I couldn't very well arm wrestle him in the middle of the throng. I followed him through the gates, along with a lot of other tourists. Many were bunched together in groups, with guides herding them like sheep. Zachary pointed to a cluster of Japanese tourists slung with cameras. He nudged me. They say that Japanese tourists really aren't pushy. They just get behind a German. He laughed, then said, "Or don't you approve of ethnic jokes?" Just at that moment, we saw a big red-faced man in lederhosen pushing his way through the crowd. "See?" Zachary said, but the man opened his mouth and called to someone, and he spoke in pure Middle American. "Ouch!" Zachary made a face. "Corn belt," What do you think he's trying to prove? No wonder most of the world hates us. Come on, Paul. If you think there's a mob today, you should see it in mid-season. He took me by the hand. I pulled back, looking at the scaffolding partly concealing a beautiful building. Not so fast, he stopped. Okay, listen. This is really interesting. They're literally inoculating the stone with antibiotics to try to slow down decay. The caryatids, you know what caryatids are? Max had seen to it that I would not come to Greece unprepared. Female forms, sort of like columns holding up a roof. I think Zachary was slightly annoyed that I knew about caryatids. Kate had said to me, "Listen, Polly, guys don't like it if they think you know more than they do." I do know more than they do. You don't need to show it. Okay, then, Zachary said. They're trying to restore the caryatids which hold up the Erection. That's what all the scaffolding is for, and that's why the Parthenon is roped off, because all those tourists' feet were wearing down the marble. Okay, Red, come on. The Theseum is one of my favorites. What gets me is knowing that all this beauty was destroyed not so much by erosion of time and normal wear and tear, as by war and greed and man's stupidity. It really makes me more anti-war than some of the more obvious things like nuclear stockpiling. Lots of these fallen columns were destroyed by people scavenging for metal. What for? Guns, cannons, I shuddered. You mean they really destroyed gorgeous temples just to get a small quantity of metal? That's exactly what I mean. And Lord Elgin, all those marbles he took? I looked around. I suppose he really thought he was saving them from the Turks. But shouldn't they be back now where they belong? At least those which didn't get lost when the ship sank? Why don't you shut up, Polyhymnia? You're showing off how much you know again, reeling back the tape of what Max taught you. Zachary knew I was showing off, but he was nice about it. You've done your homework, haven't you? That's okay. Lots of Americans don't know anything about what they're gawking at and don't really care, like my pop. He has a fancy camera and takes hundreds of slides, and when he gets them home, he can't even remember where he was when he took the pictures. He led me to a marble bench in the shade of an ancient olive tree. Let's sit for a minute and watch the crowd go by, okay? You know, Red. Don't call me Red. Polly, you really intrigue me. You aren't like any girl I've ever met. Was that good? He made it sound good. You said you're nearly 17. I nodded. I'd say you're nearly 30 and nearly 12. And there's something virginal about you. Nice contrast to me, but don't worry. I won't do anything to hurt you, trust me. Did I trust this guy? I was not in a trusting frame of mind, but I didn't have to trust him to enjoy being with him. And we will pause there.